Hey everyone, Shayna here from the Emerging Screenwriters Interview Series. In this episode, I got to speak to Todd Foley and Dan Healey. They are writing partners who met on Twitter. So screenwriting Twitter works. Go there, check it out. They began swapping scripts with each other and ultimately decided they wanted to write together, and they do this from different states. So you'll get to hear about their process, how they work, and then what their goals are for the future. And we see big things for them. That is why they were just invited to the ISA Development Slate. I hope you enjoy. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
How are
Thanks
you?
for having us.
Doing
Good.
very well.
So let's just dive into, I like to do kind of an icebreaker to get, the words coming out of the mouth. What are you both watching right now? What are you into in movies, TV?
I'm watching Beef for a second time now. Loving it even more the second time. And I'm a dad, so I'm also watching a lot of Bluey and Barbie. Took my kids twice, so that's a lot in our house.
Nice.
Hitting all the dynamics.
Bluey's like...
I wish I could be as cool of a dad as Bandit.
I know, right? I know. I wish I could be a cool dad like Bandit too.
Yeah.
What are you watching?
Earlier this week, I binged Hijack on Apple in like a single day. One with Idris Elba. I wasn't feeling well. I took some time off of work and I just watched all 7 episodes in one day. So that's probably the thing that I've watched most recently. Movie-wise, I've been revisiting some old 90s action movies. Speed, The Rock. I don't know. I'm just in a nostalgic mood lately. So
I love both of those movies.
Yeah.
I often think about The Rock, and I don't know why. Not The Rock, but like that movie. It weirdly like comes up in my brain more times than I would think it would, which is interesting.
I realized when I watched it, it's like a murderer's row of character actors. There's just like so many amazing character actors in that movie. It's incredible.
Wow, I need to watch it again. Okay, so let's dive into, because you are writing partners, let's talk about this partnership that you've created and how you guys came to be partners and kind of how it works in your writing process. And Dan, I'll start with you.
Sure. So we met online through Twitter during the pandemic, actually. There wasn't a whole lot to do. Some screenwriting competitions and other screenwriting people were doing like these mixers and also like these script swaps and things like that. So I think Todd posted like his log line and was offering a script swap. So we did that. And then we did one again. And then a few months later, we were like, should we just for fun kind of collaborate on something, since we have kind of complementary strengths and we have, an idea that we kind of want to work on. And then we were off and running. And we didn't even Zoom until we finished the first draft of the script that we were working on together. Before that, it was all just literally DMs through Twitter. It's the only way that we had communicated. So.
Wow. Okay. So how many projects have you written together? One so far?
We've finished 2, and then we're cooking in the 3rd one right now.
All right. So Todd, how did you know that Dan was, because we get this question a lot of like, how do you find a partner that you're compatible with and that you can write with successfully? So what do you think it was about the combination of the two of you that worked?
Yeah, I think that this was the first time I had ever collaborated with writing. I've always been very siloed. And I think I was really moved. You get notes from a lot of people, and you kind of realize like, oh, whose notes resonate with you well, which ones are kind of like, oh, they're just patting me on the back, and who's actually giving me some actionable ideas. And that really struck me about Dan. And I think that what we talked about, we had to determine the relationship at this onset. We said, okay, we have nothing to gain, nothing to lose. We might have something to gain. We have nothing to lose. We don't really know each other. Let's try to have fun. If it doesn't work out, we tried it. If it did work, if it does go in a positive way, let's go for it. I think that with us both just being like in DMs with this, it was just a lot of back and forth. What do you think about this? I think this. Maybe I think this. And it was just good natural rapport. And I think with us both being really invested in it, that was something that was important to me. someone that I can hash things out with and talk about it rather than I don't know. There was never any kind of like lording authority over one another. It was pretty organic. So the bar has been set very high for me now.
When you guys actually sit down to start writing, when you're past the sort of like, what do you think of this? And like hashing out ideas, when you write, do you write together? Do you send versions back? Do you add scenes and then send it back and forth? Like, what is that process for you guys?
So we have an outline. We'll create an outline together, and we break down each scene, the characters that are in the scene, and the purpose of the scene. And then once we have that, then basically we'll just kind of switch off between the two of us. We will typically do like one for one. So I'll open and then he'll do the next scene and then I'll do the third and back and forth. But again, kind of going back to like how we just communicate very openly and very well. There are scenes where I will try and I'll be like, I did not nail this. I do not have a vision for this. I think you might do better with it, and vice versa. And Todd can send me that thing, and if we're really on a roll, we'll just do multiple scenes in a row. And again, there's no like, well, I wanted to write that scene or I wanted to do this. It's very organic in that once we have that outline, we have a very good feel of like what each one of us wants to do, and have no problem asking for help when we need it.
I'll add on one thing, that preceding the outline is a very clunky, messy, usually 10-page single space brain dump, which is wonderful. I love it. And then just comments back and forth to each other where we really hash out like, well, what is like the lore behind this person, or like, why would they do this? And like, oh, we actually didn't think about these issues. So a lot of background work that goes into it first, then sort of something that we can keep referring back to.
Right. And what do you like most about having a partner to sort of like go back and forth with? For me, I have a writing partner also. And once we started writing together, we're like, why are we writing by ourselves ever? Way more fun and challenging and like interesting. So do you guys feel the same way? Like, what do you think is the greatest part about, best and worst part about having a writing partner?
I think the best is like we both like we finished a really solid draft of our second story, and then we both were on our own for solo things, and we just would say back and forth. Like I would just think, I'm like, oh, Dan, I'd be able to solve this problem so much quicker. And we often do just talk about our own projects with each other, and I really, really love and value that. But it's just way more efficient. Two is better than one, and two is much quicker than one, I should say.
The questions that I ask myself when I'm writing on something, I can now ask him. And if he agrees, great, I was on the right track. If he doesn't, then okay, maybe back to the drawing board or whatever. But when I just ask myself, there's no one to give me anything back. So I'm like, I don't know, I'll try this and see what sticks. But yeah, it's definitely so much more efficient. Yeah, it was we got a little sappy when we went back to our own projects, and it was like, I miss writing with you, man. We need to go. We need another project. This is so much easier together than it is separate. But
looking out the window with the rain coming down.
Yeah, right. I think the reason we still have separate projects though is just because like there are things that interest me that I know don't exactly interest Todd, and vice versa. And as he mentioned, like he's a dad, he's a husband, he has a different, I'm not. So, we have a different life. And so there's like different interests and things like that speak to us individually, but we can come together and find stories that speak to both of us. So
I think that's really interesting though, because me and my partner are like opposites like that too. Like I have a kid and a dog and a cat and a husband and all this stuff. And she's single and has a different sort of viewpoint. And I think that's really interesting that you guys have fundamentally different like lives.
Yeah.
Come together with different viewpoints. And I think that that's amazing.
Same.
So let's talk about, and each of you can answer individually, since Dan, you just said you have different tastes sometimes and like you come together and things. What is if you were to describe your voice or what you like to write, what you gravitate towards, Dan, for you, what are those stories that you want to tell?
When I'm on my own, I feel like I'm typically writing characters that are very ordinary, like very everyday people that are thrust into these extraordinary situations so that they can kind of rise to the occasion that they've never really had a chance to before. I feel like that's typically where I'm going. I don't have a particular genre. For me, it's either like comedies, especially like wish fulfillment comedies, or then I'll do like psychological thrillers, and there's not a lot of in between. It's one or the other for me for some reason. But yeah, I typically will always go back to like just regular everyday people who suddenly have their world kind of turned upside down and have an opportunity to do something extraordinary.
And what was your childhood trauma that I'm just kidding.
I know I'm a mediocre white guy and I'm trying not to be, so that's why I write extraordinary. I write everyday people being extraordinary. That's why.
Love it. Todd, what about you?
Yeah, I live a very domestic life. So like that's kind of my world. I like to imagine like what would this be like in like a high stake situation. So I like grounded like domestic thrillers a lot, small stories with big moments. And characters always come first to me over plot when I'm thinking of a new story. And I love imperfect people because they're real, but also imperfect endings to the stories, because I always say at the last page of a script or a book, that's just the end of me experiencing it, but I want it to go on like in people's minds, like, oh, like what is coming next? And not that it leaves unanswered questions, but yeah, I guess stories that kind of go down easy but linger.
Sneak attack. Sneak attack.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They're like, oh, this is fun. Oh, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for both of you, you are new additions to the ISA Development Slate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honor.
Let's talk about ISA a little bit and how both of you were introduced to ISA, and then how you were invited onto the development slate.
I think that I first heard about it. It was on Twitter, and I believe it was from Lisa J. I believe is on the slate as well. Yeah, so that's where I first heard about it. I clicked over to the site and I thought, well, this is like a place where I can kind of just set up shop and kind of find a home. And I found that I was going through like looking at like, oh, there's like gigs that you can apply to. Reading through that and seeing like what was being looked for, it just got me thinking like, oh, like, well, how do I actually talk about my project? Like, I know a log line and I know a script, but what's the whole packaging behind this? And I think that's how I came on to it. And I found that I've been learning a lot just how to market myself as a writer and position myself.
Yeah, I had to be Twitter for sure. Same, finding that community, and then just people also posting about the development slate and things like that. And as a screenwriter who doesn't live in LA, you're sort of constantly looking for things online in which you can meet more people and get more of a community and things like that. And so since I'm in Denver, I'm always kind of on the lookout for things. And I was always surprised at how supportive the screenwriting community was on Twitter. And so, when a few trusted people would drop resources, you look into them. And so, yeah, same thing with Todd, the ISA with the gigs. The gigs for sure is what really stood out. Just that opportunity to submit, and even the chance of somebody reading my stuff, that, again, from being outside of what feels like that bubble, definitely helped. So.
And how has it been so far? I mean, it's very brand new, but how has it been so far being on the development slate?
So far, I think it's been a wonderful experience. Again, I think it's just it's an honor that, there's strangers I've never met that know my script pretty well and have talked with me about it, and have really forced me and forced us to look at it in a different way and really kind of dig as deep as possible to get the most out of the story. So yeah, I think so far, like you said, it's new, but there are questions that now I can ask on our other scripts or my personal scripts and things like that I may not have thought about unless I had started to go through this process. So
I kind of had this understanding of like, well, the ISA is this like great website and platform, but now since being on the slate, like I've had communication with you and a couple other team members, and the enthusiasm for storytellers and for storytelling is very contagious, and that's it's really inspiring to me, and it's a huge privilege to be able to converse about ideas that I have and how to make them better, how to grow them. So I think there's just always a trajectory of growth as a writer, and this is such a non-linear path to be following and pursuing, and so ambiguous. So it's I feel like my toolkit has really expanded just with the opportunities for conversation.
Yeah, it went from like a cool website to now like a cool group of people.
Yes,
that, like Todd said, like they actually care. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
And for both of you, and this can be individual or together, when you think about your goals moving forward, do you set short-term goals? Like, do you do those like 1 year, 5 year big goal, or are you trying to stay present and kind of like, where are you in the goal setting? And then what is that big, like, woo, shining star in the sky that you're aiming for?
Every year, like a January thing, I kind of reassess what I want to do for the next year, or the current year, I guess. I'm always reevaluating. I don't think it ever actually works the way I always way overestimate what I can get done in a single year, but I may as well shoot for it. I know for me, I guess in the next like year or so, my big goal is to try to get representation, get a manager. I mean, long term, or like 5 years, always like, this is what I want to do. I'd like to be able to be a full-time working screenwriter, quit my day job, never go back ever. But yeah, I think it's important to have the short-term goals too. Like by the end of the year, it'd be nice to do this, but you got to be fluid with it too, just because things happen for sure.
I think for me, I've had to reevaluate just what goals are and how to set them. Like from when I first started, I had, I guess maybe what are hopes and what are things that I would love to happen and things that I can actually make happen. Because for a while it was, I would love to get a manager, sell a script, and those are things that are completely out of my control. And then it's easy to look at like, oh, I didn't achieve my goals again. Like that's, and then you just take that as a bummer. But I realized I'm like, well, I can have like another 2 really like ready to go samples ready for if someone asks me what I write, and maybe I diversify by adding a new genre for a sample or a different format. Like I've primarily only done features, but I thought maybe you should tackle a pilot as well. So I think just breaking down those goals, I try to add to my portfolio each year, and there's the hope that that one of these will be that thing, that project that opens a door. But it also could be, it might not be the first thing that I've written. It might be something that kind of came off on a whim. That's the most recent one. So I think just being very open to what can come, and yeah. So I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
It's a very long-winded answer.
That's a better answer. Change mine to what Todd said. That's better. Todd should have went first on that one.
But on that same front, let's talk about how you both handle, because you handle them well, how you handle notes and how you handle rejection, negative feedback, any sort of negativity. How do you guys handle that internally? How do you handle that professionally?
For me, I need to kind of take back a bit of power in how I'm talking about my journey and my process with it. So like rejection was like the easiest word to come by. And I've just had to take that out of how I talk about my writing experience at all, and just saying like, it was a pass. This one didn't get picked up, because when I first started those first passes, like I think a lot of writers probably can relate that so much of it, my self-worth is wrapped up in this project and what people think of it. And I think, oh, I'm just being rejected as a human being, all my creativity. Whereas realizing, okay, this just wasn't the right project for this person at this time, and maybe just not the right draft. So I think with notes, for me is I really have to know the heart of my story first before I ask for notes. And then I think and maybe it's even just like looking back into that brain dump. That's kind of where I really know my story. And then I can say, well, does this note going to help me achieve this goal? Is this just someone's subjective? Because everyone brings subjectivity into it. So I think it's just, yeah, looking for the note behind the note. And that you don't have to take every note, but maybe just consider them too.
Yeah, I think it's about the confidence of knowing what you want to do with it, and then taking a note and making sure that it aligns with your goal for the project, stuff like that. So as Todd said, you don't have to please everybody. You're never going to please everybody. You don't have to take every note. You don't have to take every consideration. But I think it's important to at least listen, and you can kind of feel it once you've been writing long enough. You can kind of feel it in your gut when you hear something, and you're like, you know what, they're right. I don't want to admit it, but that's probably right. And obviously, if more than one person brings it up, then that's probably something too. I just heard something recently about a great Bill Hader quote. I think it's a few years old, but I just heard it, where he's like, if someone tells you, and I'm gonna butcher the actual wording, but he was like, if someone tells you what's wrong, they're probably right that that thing is wrong. But if they tell you how to fix it, their solution is probably incorrect. And I was like, that's definitely true. Like I've had people just, we tell stories all the time, so there's just an instinct that something is not working. And I like when people suggest a fix. That's cool. Again, I think it shows that they care. But
It's finding the core underneath.
thank you. Sorry, lost my chat. Yes, finding the core. Yeah, finding the core of the problem for sure.
I just want to add in. I'm gonna just praise Dan a little bit here. We always joke that I'm the more emotional one in our relationship. So sometimes, like, I think the gut can be, for my reaction, be like, I have to take these first notes that came in from this first reader and think I've got a problem solved with this. And I adopted a practice that Dan introduced to me where he would just collect all the notes that he got and just organize them, categorize them. Like, this is for character, this is for plot. And then saying, oh, one person had this idea, but three people felt this way about it. And just kind of finding, like, where's the consensus in it? And finding that core piece with it. So I think, and that kind of helps just give a bit more emotional distance from reading the notes too. So
takes it from being
myself,
analytical and business. I like
It's not personal. No. And then as far as rejection, I mean, for a sports analogy, you can strike out 7 out of 10 times and still make the Hall of Fame. So don't worry about rejection. That's going to happen. Who cares?
I love that. Yes. Okay, so we are going to talk about advice. Like, what's the best advice that you would give to screenwriters in general, newbies in the industry, maybe people who are discouraged a little bit about their career or just hitting a wall or something. So what's good advice that you've received that you'd want to share?
Find a good therapist. I say that because I finally found one this year and it did help me a lot. But no, I think that there's a lot of self-compassion, I think, that has to come with it. Like, life is wild, and this pursuit as a writer is very wild too, and beyond your control, and so ambiguous and non-linear. I think if you can find ways to make peace with that, peace in the unanswered or in the lack of clarity, but just to really chase the fun too. Like, there's a Jordan Peele quote where he just talks about, like, I have to chase the fun in my stories. And when you're going through drafts and revisions and getting notes, just try to come back to what was it that, like, sparked that that fun, and watch so many shows and movies.
Read and watch as much as you can, for sure. Especially read. It's so easy to find scripts online for free, so just read a whole bunch. Be patient. It takes so much longer than you think it's going to. Even like when you're just knocking on the door, it takes a while just to find that door. So yeah, just be patient and finish. Whatever you start, just finish, even if it's horrible. And it will be. But, I've written really bad first drafts, and then I've written what I thought was very good first drafts. And you know what? I end up doing the same amount of rewriting on both of them, no matter what. So just finish. It'll help.
Attacked. I feel attacked. You guys have that? Do you have that script? So I have this script that I call my shame script that I'm halfway done with. That's been sitting there for years. Something's wrong with it and I can't finish it, and I know because there's a problem and I can't quite solve it. Do you have those, or do you actually finish everything?
I'm stuck in the outline phase of a script that I've been working on for 2 years, and every time I get a little bit closer, I feel like something else pops up, or there's an opportunity to rewrite something that's maybe a little bit farther along and stuff. So I haven't started that one, to be fair, but I get mad every time I go back to it. I'm like, I just need to finish this outline, and then I can just bust through the first draft, and then I'll be done. And I never seem to be able to get there. So
Good.
Take my advice, but I do what I can.
Do you have any of those, Todd?
I do, yeah. And I think that I will say I will finish the draft, but sometimes that feature length draft will be 60 pages just because I'm like, I got to start and an ending on it. And then it's usually by draft 2 or 3 that it finally feels like this is a story now. But I think when I can look at something just like eagle eye, I'll usually get it drafted, print it, and then just leave it. I'll look at it and feel proud of it, but I won't let myself read it at least until a few weeks have passed. I let myself feel good about it, and then I can say, okay, I don't emotionally care about this as much, so now I can see what's wrong with it and how it can get better. But yeah, I think a big part, and Dan was big for this for me, was just finding trusted people that you can invite into the process too.
Yeah, that's true.
And they can help you see things. Yeah.
I love that. What I forgot to ask you this at the beginning, and I wanted to ask this so we can wrap this up. But what are your favorite movies that you will watch over and over again? And when somebody says which favorite movie, you're like, boom, that one. And you can tell me as many as you want. I mean, I know we can never narrow it down to one or one genre or one type. So do you have those movies that you're like, yep, that's it for me? It can be ones when you were young that were the ones that made you want to write or become a filmmaker or whatever.
Oh yeah, I'm about to get ready. It's really good. Yeah. You want me to do more than one? Yeah. Yes, I actually, early on when I started writing, making a list of my favorite movies and figuring out what their theme was a really good exercise for me to figure out the kind of stories I wanted to tell. Because I was just here's my top 20 movies, or here's 20 of my favorite movies. What do they have in common? Trying to find through lines. So I actually have a written list of my favorite movies that I try to update as much as possible.
There you go.
Or every so often. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original from when I was a kid, for sure. The first live action one, it was amazing. Lord of the Rings, absolutely. Seven, Fight Club, I'm a big Fincher fan. Memento, Superbad. Throw a comedy in there. It's a good mix for sure.
That is a very eclectic mix.
Yeah.
And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I love it. And Todd's going to say The Reputation, Taylor Swift documentary.
Yes. I'll go through the full Eras tour. Yeah. I'm a hardcore. Actually, I generally do my brain dump and outlining with going through. I just have Taylor on shuffle on Spotify for me. Okay. And then when I'm editing, it's straight up it's Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. I don't know why, but it shifts to I get to from dreaming to okay, let's get down to this, get a good beat, and just go through.
That's a good ad. Yeah. What's the soundtrack for writing? What I love that. That's so great. Oh my God. Okay,
favorite movies, yeah. So this is the ones where I'm these are the ones that I could just talk about for hours. Gone Girl, What's Up Doc, Miss Congeniality, Sister Act, both of them. The Shining, Hereditary, Lion King, What Lies Beneath, Little Rascals, and the original Mummy movie. Some of
We're
that
so
stems from me
weird.
being a dad. Some of that stems from me just like these were the ones that really stick with me. Like I love being scared. I love to laugh. I like to care about people
Yeah.
when I'm watching them. So
It's interesting because, like horror and comedy are so different, but they're not. At the core, they're so similar in the underlying pain that's underneath whatever it is. Either you're screaming or you're laughing. So I get it. Those are, I love both of your lists. Those are great and very strange and like all over the place.
yeah.
I love it.
We're so weird.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for sharing yourselves and your stories and your process and how you write. And yeah, much success to you. I'm looking forward to your future. It's going to
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited as well, and it was a privilege to get to chat too.